boy. Good evening. Welcome to City Council. Tonight is Tuesday, July 18th, 2017. I'd like to call the meeting to order. And Councilor Di Natale, will you lead us in the salute to the flag?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I guess we use this for now.
Madam Clerk, will you conduct the roll call, please?
President Kushmerek is absent. Councilor Bean.
Present.
Councilor Boishman.
Here.
Councilor Beazall. Councilor Clark.
Here.
Councilor Di Natale.
Here.
Councilor Donnelly. Vice President Green.
Here.
Councilor Joseph. Councilor Caddy. Councilor Tran.
Here.
Moving forward, we'll move on to the public forum. Anyone wishing to speak on a matter on the agenda may do so for not more than 2 minutes. If you are addressing public hearing petitions, you will have an opportunity to speak at that time. Please approach the center table and identify yourself by name and address for the record and the petition number on the agenda you are addressing. Does anyone here wish to speak? Good evening, Mr. Brooks.
Good evening, Counselor. My name's Calvin Brooks. I am the city auditor. And in the packet, I believe there's a copy of a letter I sent requesting that items 20317 and 20417 be considered tonight under suspension of the rules. They have to do with the a couple of transfers within departments for fiscal year 2017, which closed on June 30th. And since the next meeting is not until September, it would be helpful to have the matter just resolved at this time.
Move 20317 be given suspension of the rules. Second.
Motion and second for suspension on 20317 and 20417.
Just 20317.
I'll add 20417.
Sorry, Councilor Detail. Okay.
What did you say?
Motion and second for suspension of the rules on petition 20317 and 20417. Speaking to the motion, Councilor Boishman.
On a motion, on 204, is the airport guy here tonight? Mr. Ellis, Scott Ellis, is he here?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Ellis is here.
This is just on suspension.
Can I ask him a
This
question?
is just for the suspension of the rules.
All right, I suspension the rule, okay.
Okay. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None.
Move 20317 and 20417 be granted. Second.
Motion and second to grant 203 and 20417. Speaking to the motion.
On 204, I'd like to speak to the motion. I'd like to ask Mr. Ellis some questions, please, if that's okay with the board.
Sure, Mr. Ellis.
I know it's not a lot of money, Mr. Ellis, but my question to you on overtime, can I ask you, for a number of years since I've been on this council, I asked you for, how come we're not throwing up log sheets to tell us what they're doing down there? And I drive down the airport every day, Airport Road, every day. And I notice on the inside of the fence, there's a lot of overgrowth. At one time, you could actually see the airport from the road, and you can't see it today. Is that going to cover us to cut that overgrowth down?
This is, the matter on the agenda is strictly about moving money for overtime.
Overtime.
I don't understand what tree growth has to do with overtime.
Not tree road, it's overgrowth. Is that, I presume you're going to give somebody overtime to cut it down, right?
No, the schedule is, the overtime, the tree growth is either cut through regular time, or it's done through the Massachusetts Vegetative Management Program with the Department of Transportation, or through usually FAA funding is what the project is being, our current project right now.
But I'm not talking about trees that are 80 feet high, sir. I'm talking about trees that are 10 feet high or 8 feet high, overgrown bushes and that. At one time, you literally could see the whole side of the fence and down there, and you can't see nothing now.
Councilor
And-
Boishman?
Yeah. I understand what it
petition-
says, ma'am, but it says overtime, Ms. President.
Right, but the order is transferred from airport personal services, sick time, personal day buyback, and credited to the airport personal services and overtime, $521.
Yeah, I understand. I said it wasn't a lot of money. All right, never mind then. Forget it, Mr. Ellis.
Thank you. Counselor Di Natale.
This is to close the account out, right?
Yes,
So this is money that's already been incurred.
yes.
Thank you.
Sure. Mayor Di Natale.
To speak to the council's concerns regarding the maintenance of the facility and whatnot, we will be requesting, I, as a member of the commission, have requested and will be receiving a maintenance plan that's going to outline how we're going to utilize the individuals that are there now. We're going to take a look at whether or not we're getting what we should.
Okay, I appreciate it. That's all I want to know. Thank you, Vin. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Motion and a second to adopt both.
Motion and second on the floor to adopt 203 and 204-17. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Granted.
Thank you, Counselor.
Okay. Okay. Hi, Mr. Deline.
Good evening, councilors. Similar, I was hoping that the council could also suspend the rules for 201-17 to accept a grant for drinking water supply protection.
Make a motion to suspend the rules at 2117.
I have a motion, second for suspension of the rules of 201-17. Speaking to the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Oh, Counselor Di Natale?
Move for amending 20117 to read resolution and order this Tuesday of July 18th, 2017, authorizing the city of Fitchburg to accept funds from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs and its Department of Environmental Protection in the amounts up to $162,550 for the purpose of purchasing certain tracts of land and purchasing conservation restrictions on other tracts of land in the town of Ashby and the town of Ashburnham, Massachusetts, comprising 4 tracts and approximately 90 acres of land for the purpose of protecting and conserving land in the city's drinking water supply watershed. I move that we amend this 20117 to read that. Second.
Motion and second on the amendment. Speaking to the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Adopt as amended.
Move 20117 be adopted as amended. Second.
Motion and second for the amended adoption of 201-17. All those in favor? Counselor Joseph?
There's a reason why we have to rush it through. What's the reason why we have to rush this through?
We have a limited time for accepting the grant, and I'll be honest, I apologize, I kind of get away from Janet and I on the schedule for it, so we'd actually been awarded the grant earlier this year, in the spring, so just with things being so busy,
Okay, so I'm looking at the second page of the project budget. Is that saying that there's it's a total of $344,000? Explain this page to me so I know. Are we as a city contributing
Speaking on the
half the money to this grant?
half the money. And we do have money set aside for watershed protection. When the conservation restriction was sold to the state from the northern watershed, we actually have $336,000 left in that. And Janet, over the years, with some of the material I sent earlier today, has actually been able to leverage quite a bit. So, but yeah, we are going to contribute. The grants aren't as good as they used to be years ago. It's about a 50-50 grant. It used to be more, but that's where we're at now, and we feel these tracks are valuable for protection of that reservoir.
Okay, so we're taking money from this And with-
336,000, and we need to contribute 154,000.
from a previous restrict,
Right.
and is that money, can that money be used elsewhere, or is that what that
No,
money's
it's
earmarked
dedicated
for?
for, it was contingent to be dedicated for protection of other watershed lands. It's
Great.
just basically been set aside, so there's no impact. It's not, we're not gonna take money from a water main project and put it on this. It's money that's been there, so.
I want to just commend you both for the work that you do to get us that money and to keep protecting our watershed. Eventually, other people are going to find out how important this is to their own cities, and I think that we're far further ahead of the game than a lot of people. So I appreciate your diligence in getting this stuff done on a regular basis. Thank you.
Counselor Di Natale?
Thank you. My radar went up when I read the words city net cost. Did you say that this 155 is already in your budget?
Yes, it's in a
It's in that watershed account, right?
watershed
Maintenance account?
Right, it has 336,000,
It has 336.
Right.
So half of that budget's gonna be consumed by this.
correct.
Is the remainder of that budget sufficient for, I guess what I'm asking, John, is, was the 336 planned as if we were gonna have this?
Planned as far as,
You have 336, this is 155, so the other 180
as for anything else that comes up down the road, so.
comes up down the road.
Right.
Okay.
And when we looked at these tracks, we actually took a look at any other potential properties in the southern watershed and also the northern watershed, because we didn't want to, if there was some large parcel that we should have, reserved for that, we wouldn't have gone for this grant, but we felt that these were the most valuable ones, and sometimes you just have to act when something is available.
So refresh my memory now. The current watersheds that we protect, where is that money for maintenance of that money, maintenance of that land, if it's not in the 336?
We have a line item for watershed maintenance.
So it's two line items.
Right.
Watershed maintenance and watershed
Correct,
purchasing?
yes.
Okay. So this 155 is to purchase it.
There's a purchase of 2 tracks and conservation restrictions on another 2 tracks. So we're paying for actually buying 2 per tracks, and the other 2, we're just gonna preserve permanently. The people will retain ownership. We don't spend as much money, allows us, our money to go further, but it will never be developed.
So the 154 is budgeted for procurement of the land,
Right,
and then the maintenance of that land and other associated land is covered elsewhere.
right.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a motion to adopt as amended edition 20117. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion granted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And they're scrambling to see who gets here first, right? Mr. Lasko, good morning, good evening.
Yeah, I'm Lenny Laxo, DPW Commissioner. I'd like to speak about order number 205-17. Yeah, this is a grant that we've received working with the Fitchburg Greenway Committee, and thanks to Janet Morrison, who's here tonight, for preliminary planning of $5,000 for trails on Rollstone Hill. You might be aware that Peter Capadagli and a group of other people are looking at the idea of opening up Rollstone Hill for a trail network. If anybody's been on his tours up there, it's really spectacular views, and it'd be kind of a neat thing for the city. Ultimately, we'd like to apply for a park grant from the state, but in order to prepare a park grant, we would need to do some preliminary work and planning these trails. And that's what the $5,000 is for from the North Central Massachusetts Community Foundation. So just due to the timing, if you will, we'd like to do this under suspension of the rules.
Move for suspension. Second.
Motion seconded to suspend the rules. Speaking to the order, Counselor Di Natale.
Oh, no, I'm all set.
You answered all that?
No, I was gonna raise my hand and make a motion. It's already,
Okay.
Counselor Bean
All
beat
right.
me to it.
All right, so we have a motion second to adopt 205-17 under suspension of the rules. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Second.
Move to adopt 205-17.
Second.
We have a motion and second to adopt 205-17. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Adopted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Zarella.
Thank you. I'm just here on behalf of the Zoning Board of Appeals on petition 9817. I don't have any specific commentary to add at the moment. I just wanted to make the council aware that if any questions arise when that petition is under consideration, I am available to answer from a zoning board perspective if the council would like that input.
Thank you. Counselor Joseph.
Just his name and address for the record.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Anthony Zarella, 33 St. Paul Street.
Thank you, Anthony.
Good evening, councilors. For the record, AJ Terigny, Chief of Staff to Mayor Dinatelli. I'm just speaking on the appointment letter on your agenda this evening of Miss Victoria Arend to the Board of Library Trustees. Unfortunately, I received an email yesterday afternoon due to a recent personal experience. Although very qualified to serve on the Board of Trustees, Miss Arend does not feel she would be able to fully perform the duties of a trustee due to a scheduling experience. So she wanted to ensure that someone would be able to serve in that capacity. After conferring with the city clerk, I would ask to give a leave to withdraw for her appointment.
Move the appointment letter of Ms. Victoria Wren be given leave to withdraw.
Second.
I have a motion and second to give the appointment letter leave to withdraw. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you, councilors.
We do this. Okay, moving forward, if there are no objections, we will now hear the oral report from the Appointments Committee by Counselor Bean. What was that? Got it after.
The Appointments Committee met tonight at 6:45. We had 3 items before us. The first one was the new appointments of election workers. The list was approved by the committee. Second one was the permanent reserve police officers, Fitchburg Police Department. There were 3 names: Hiram J. Velasquez, Ismael Sanchez, and Daniela Lopez. Those are approved unanimously. And a permanent full-time firefighter with the Fitchburg Fire Department, Tyson Hertzberg, was approved unanimously.
Move the Appointments Committee report be accepted and the appointments confirmed.
Second.
Motion and second that the appointments be confirmed. We'll do the swearing in. And city clerk will do the swearing in of those officers. And at that point, after you're sworn in, friends and family can take pictures here in the well.
All in favor?
Oh, and we will make a motion to accept the motion from the, I'm sorry, from the Appointments Committee. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
We have too much hardware now.
I do solemnly promise and swear. That I will faithfully and impartially. And to the best of my knowledge and ability. Perform and discharge all the duties. Incumbent upon me. As permanent reserve police officers. For the city of Fitchburg. So help me God. I can't see. I'm a squirt. This is the shortest ones. I know. Sorry, you're gonna have to hold it. All right.
Family, come on up.
What? Oh. How does that? Videos? I don't know. Shirley's does. Yes. Just put it Thank you.
Took like 3 so you guys can choose which one.
Yeah, this will be a.
I got like 1,000.
There you go. You getting in there?
All right, next.
Mom's turn. Smile.
Now look at me.
You should just put a
Mine
camera
are
right
gonna be
here.
better than yours. All right, Chris, yeah.
No, that's it, that's it.
You only do this once. Only do it once. I am. Who's taking it?
Yep, get in there. I'll take it.
Try to.
No, I got this.
Group picture. Brittany's taking the picture.
I'm taking a picture, guys.
No, I know.
Basically professional. Oh yeah, look at this. Oh yeah. Keep staying there. Perfect. Got it.
One
Just
more,
in case
Chief.
one person was-
Chief. Can I grab one with you?
I couldn't, there was a dim whole wide group. It was like torture.
There we go. There we go.
Oh yeah, there's the money,
here.
there's the money shot.
1, 2, 3. Excellent. Thanks, guys.
Cool.
Yes.
Report from the Committee on Records, Counselor Donley.
We have reviewed the records, and they appear to be in order.
Move the Committee on Records report be accepted.
Second.
We have a motion and second to accept the report of the Committees on Records. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great. Moving on to other communication, comments from the ZBA regarding the Planning Board report on petition 9817.
Could refer to petition 09D817.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? None. It's unanimous. All right, so that petition 09817, Vincent Pusateri II, City Solicitor, to amend Chapter 181.356 of the Fitchburg Zoning Board by inserting 181.3561 regarding a structure that has been abandoned or not used for more than 2 years will not require a special permit as outlined in the enclosed petition. I have a motion and second to accept the planning board report. Speaking to the motion, Counselor Boishman.
Speaking to the motion. Oh, yeah. No,
I'm just accepting the planning board's report.
Oh, on the planning board's report, there's only, I don't know if I'm like speaking out of order, there's only one question I have for the planning board. Because on this report that I received, what I don't like about it is that the special requirement for the 1 and 2 family homes, I don't think it goes far enough on your thing.
And Counselor Boishman, we will, we're going to move into the recess public hearing to move
On it?
forward on that. And at
Okay.
that point, I think that would be a time to ask those questions.
All right then, okay then, thank you.
So we are accepting the planning board report. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, recess public hearing. Yes, please.
Yes.
Petition 09817, Vincent Pusateri II, City Solicitor, to amend Chapter 181-356 of the Fitchburg Zoning Board by inserting 181.3561 regarding a structure that has been abandoned or not used for more than 2 years will not require a special permit as outlined in the enclosed petition. So we will declare the hearing resumed. Counselor Bean.
Madam President, We did receive the planning board report tonight. We've received the zoning board report. I know the city solicitor has made some comments to the petition also. I would recommend that, since we have the three recommendations, and there are some conflicting recommendations from those folks, maybe that we refer this to a special meeting of the city council prior to the meeting on September 5th, that we could then have the planning board and zoning board there with us to be able to discuss and hopefully come up with a unified proposal to go forward with.
Second.
Counselor Di Natale.
I would like to, I agree with Counselor Bean, but I mean, if we can influence the date of this meeting, I mean, I'm not a fan of having it at a regular council meeting. I feel that this should be either a special meeting of the council or a council as a whole committee meeting, since this is involving so many different sectors of the city boards and commissions. Because I have a feeling this is gonna take quite some time to hash out with the three areas and still allow for public comment. I feel like this should be a standalone meeting, since this is generating a lot of interest and a lot of differing viewpoints amongst boards and commissions with the attorney's office. That's just my recommendation. I agree wholeheartedly with what he said. I just would prefer not to have it at a regular council meeting. So it gives us some time to digest and focus just on that and give ourselves 2-3 hours just to focus on this and not, you know, at a regular meeting where there's a lot of other items on the agenda. That's just my 2 cents on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Donnelly.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think there's been quite a bit of discussion at length for quite some period of time. And I don't think that there'd be that much additional information that hasn't already been gathered. I think at this point, it's just gathering the information that has already been given. They both Zoning Board of Appeals and the Planning Board have given. We have listened to a few individuals from the public that have expressed their opinion, shown the individual cases, and the last meeting was kind of almost a duplicity of the meeting prior. I don't think it's going to be a 2-3 hour session. I think we could do it if we did it in an hour, as long as planning and zoning. And we're not planning, zoning, council, we may not all agree on everything. We have to agree on the majority of things and get something moving. But I don't think it's going to be a long meeting.
Counselor Bean, thank you.
I had looked at other dates. Unfortunately, because of the planning board's schedule, they have a meeting on that following Tuesday, which would be right before the finance committee meeting, where we could have had a standalone meeting. The hope was to be able to get the planning board at the meeting, so that's why I suggested September 5th. I, too, would rather have it a standalone meeting, but to accommodate schedules, we had to do it. The best we could do would be September 5th. If we were able to meet on a Thursday night, we could do it, but we're not sure of a location.
If he's saying something at 6 o'clock or to the regular.
Just a point of clarification, are you wanting a special meeting on September 5th at 6 PM?
Yes,
Okay, a special meeting.
yes.
Counselor Di Natale.
I'm just saying, as Chair of Finance, we're not going to have a meeting likely next week, and the first meeting of, after the recess is the 5th. I mean, it's going to be on, is it a Thursday, our first meeting on the 5th, or that's a Tuesday, right?
Tuesday.
So I don't foresee much being on the agenda. I mean, I can always cancel the 12th meeting, but be that as it may, in order to do this, would we have to close this hearing or we can just recess it again and send it to a special council meeting on September 5th at 6 o'clock? I mean, it's up to the council as a whole, but I mean, if you're concerned about the finance meeting the week after, I can cancel it very easily and just hold off.
It wasn't that concern. The concern was the planning board and zoning board being able to attend. They have their meeting scheduled that night.
Okay.
Counselor Joseph.
It doesn't appear that we're going to have a finance committee meeting next week. Is there any reason why we can't do this next week? Because what is the zoning board and the planning board's schedule for next, what weeks do you meet? Every Tuesday?
Second Tuesday.
Same,
So that's-
second Tuesday. Sorry.
So
August 8th, so, I mean, I'm available that next week.
So I don't, why can't we just get it going next Tuesday, and then if we come to a conclusion, we can probably pass something at the September 5th meeting?
There won't be a July 28th finance meeting, I can tell you that right now.
I know.
So,
It's looking that way.
Yep.
Counselor Caddy?
I was gonna ask that we talk to the zoning and planning that were here and see if they would accommodate us if we had a meeting, that's all.
So let me understand, next Tuesday evening does work for both boards. Mr. Zabilla?
Would the council be looking to get the entire board or just a representative from the board?
as many as
Just a
wanna come.
representative, otherwise you'd have a quorum.
Okay.
Oh, it's gonna have to be posted anyways. You can post it as a joint meeting of the three.
Okay.
Is there enough time to do that?
What's the urgency?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask.
It's a joint meeting. You're recessing. You're recessing the hearing to a joint meeting.
Counselor
I wanna
Dinatelli?
get a ruling from the solicitor.
I'm not opposed to the idea, I just don't understand, is there an urgency on this? I mean, there's no meetings in August for zoning, correct?
That is correct.
But you do have a planning board meeting in August?
Yes.
Okay, but you guys have already acted on it, so I'm just curious why, we can do it the 20th if that's the will of the council. We don't have to rush to do it next week. I don't understand the urgency, is what I'm saying. I mean,
Right.
if we shouldn't be married to that idea just to get it done. I don't see the urgency, I really don't.
Attorney Pusateri, is there an urgency?
No.
Would it give,
This is an ordinance that's been around for well over 20 years, and
Yeah.
if we take an additional 30 days to fix it, or to amend it, change it, to modernize it, then
I'm also asking because, to you, Mr. Solicitor, with the comments received by those two boards, has your office collaborated with them and come up with a new draft with those changes? I'd assume not yet, right? So you'd need some time to actually process this, and
So to be honest, I'm listening to the concept of having the balance of August to really figure out some detail issues that came up, and I would appreciate that. Although what we did do to be prepared, if you chose to want to even move forward tonight, we gave you a complete document that has the planning board, the zoning board, and our comments. Of course, a lot of the issues that I need to work out might even be worked out during the ordinance process, drafting the actual ordinance that's got to go for reading.
Right.
But we would avoid any surprises in the drafting of that ordinance if we could get the balance of August.
Okay.
okay,
Counselor
so,
Donnelly?
yep, okay, thanks.
Two comments. I hope the commissioner is involved as well as the zoning and planning so that we all can hear from his perspective also. In the sense of urgency, I just can imagine somebody trying to buy a single-family house in Fitchburg that they wanted to fix up in July and August and move in into September so that their kids could go to school. Won't happen. Not gonna happen. So it's not urgent evidently to anybody here, but there may be somebody out there that has plans and is trying to do something with their family. That does create a sense of urgency. I'm not suggesting that we should rush, but I just do want to present the fact that there are people out there that our lack of recognition of urgency, it's a different perspective. Thank you.
Counselor Dinatelli?
The zoning board's not meeting next month, so any applications or new applications that you suggested, Counselor Donnelly, won't be taken up anyway until September the earliest. So that's why I said there doesn't sound like there's any urgency, because there's no zoning board meetings next month. There's not going to be any new applications heard by them if the status quo remains. So I would prefer to give the attorney's office some time to process the comments and be more prepared in 5 weeks' time when we meet on the 5th or sometime in September. And then hopefully the changes will be enacted, and then by the October, November zoning board meetings, these new changes will take effect. So, yeah, I mean, it may impact somebody in October or September maybe, but right now, if someone were to go in and apply, they're not going to be heard anyway. So that's all. Thank you.
Counselor Donley.
Thank you. Just to explain my perspective on a petition, this is to avoid going in front of the council, in front of the zoning board. It's so that you could go directly to the building department and get a permit and begin work immediately on single-family homes. So there is no delay. What we have is the delay is going in front of the board, pulling the permits, getting all the information, advertising, the expense that's involved, and the time waiting, even after it's approved, is a 20-day waiting period. So this is why, for a single-family home that somebody wants to move into, if they buy it, if the ordinance was approved, they could buy the house, they could get their permits from the building inspector, get the work done and move in, without going in front of the zoning board. That's what this petition is. Thank you.
Counselor Donley, Di Natale, sorry.
Okay, so I'm trying to understand this from a process perspective, try to get the ball rolling here. So this is currently in petition format. There's no ordinance written yet, obviously. So even if we were to pass this petition with the comments included, we're not going to get an ordinance until the next meeting that we hold potentially, which is what you said, sir. You would appreciate having some time to digest everything, because I read through all the comments, and some are conflicting. There are disagreements, and there's some changes that have to be vetted out, but this is only in petition format, and we have to go through a first reading and a final reading. So at the very least, if we have another meeting in July, next week, let's say, it's only to pass the petition. Then the solicitor's got to draft the ordinance. We're going to meet September 5th, let's say vote on the first reading, and then on September 19th is when the final reading gets. So this won't even be enacted until end of September at best, which is why I suggested we hold off. Understanding there might be someone coming forward in the next couple of months, got it, but the way this is all playing out, we're not going to have something in final form and fully vetted through council until late September anyway. So anybody who's interested now or next month, or even in September, they're not going to be able to do anything yet. They're going to have to follow the old ordinance until that time. So that was my suggestion, not to have it next week, because I want to make sure, considering the conflicting statements by some of these boards with the attorney, give them some time to iron this out so we get it right the first time. But this is just a petition. I mean, if we want to pass it tonight, fine. He's still got to draft the ordinance. It's got to go through two council meetings. So this isn't going to get through the pipeline until the end of September anyway. Thank you.
Attorney Pisteri.
Just to Councilor Donnelly and Councilor Di Natale's point, they're both correct. Where Councilor Donnelly has pointed out, a lot of this will be to avoid going to the zoning board specifically for relief. But to Councilor Di Natale's point, even if we would have a special meeting in September on the 5th, we're really only going to lose a couple of weeks because of the process of having to get the ordinance into the clerk's office for reading here. So even if everything was done on the 5th, the ordinance was passed, or the petition was passed, I think it would be the next meeting that you'd have the ordinance anyways, so.
All right, thank you. I do have one question for Mr. Barbadaro, where he's here. Do we have residents that are kind of in the queue waiting for this to happen? If you can speak to that, or you're going back to the old, what's currently on our books now for any of those that are applying?
There's about 3 or 4 that come to mind.
Okay.
I'm sure there's actually more in the queue for the ZBA, probably a lot more, but there's been recent applicants coming in. And there are a couple that are single-family dwellings that builders are trying to sell. But, you know, how do you thwart your process? You know, how do you shorten it? I don't see from the description that there's any way to do that.
Attorney Pusteri.
Just as a follow-up to the Commissioner's point, the ordinance that's before you tonight is for 3 families and for multifamilies. That would be, the petition. The petition for single family and 2 families has already been referred to the September 5th meeting at our last council session. So we're handling this, and I think it was a very good point that our building commissioner brought to the table during the process of trying to figure out how to handle this abandoned property issue, is to segregate the properties into different categories. Single and two-family being tier 1. That's going to be here on September 5th anyways. This petition, which was advanced for tonight, which is 3 families and multifamilies, and then pretty much everything else would be in our 3rd tier. So just being able to articulate that, my suggestion is many of the properties that we have in the queue are the abandoned single and two-family properties. And obviously, some of them likely are 3-family and multifamily properties.
Right. Thank you for that.
Is there a motion on the floor?
We're still in the hearing.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, there was. I second his.
Okay.
There's a motion, and second, to send it to a special meeting.
All right, so as it reads right now, we have a motion and a second to send it to a special meeting on September 5th at 6 o'clock. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. I have
Second.
a motion and second to recess the hearing. All those in favor?
Just
How do we process?
Speaking of motion,
Counselor
I'd
Donley?
like to know if there's anybody else here that, from the public, that would like to speak,
no.
just to make sure.
Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak on behalf of this motion? Hearing none. Counselor Joseph?
I guess now I've become confused. On the 5th, are we meeting about,
Ones
are
or
we
twos?
having a meeting about tier 1 and then a meeting about tier 2 now? Or is that how this is playing out?
Yeah, yes, sir. So the planning board has a petition that they started regarding 1 and 2 family properties.
Okay.
And that is going to be, that was referred to a public hearing on your September 5th council agenda. And this will now be heard at 6 o'clock in your special committee, if we continue in this course. And then again, there'll be the public hearing on this petition that night as well.
All right, so we're having a special meeting on the larger ones, because I guess there's more concern about the larger ones. And then during our regular meeting, we're going to have is there recommendations already from the 3 boards about the single family?
No, I think you only have a petition from the planning board on your single-family and two-family property. And this is not an unfamiliar petition to you, Counselor. This was a petition that was brought to this council, I think, last year, and it did not succeed. So I think it's been brought again at the request of the planning board for you to look at this petition one more time.
Does that have comments, does that petition have comments by legal and zoning, or do we feel that that's not required?
I don't feel that is required. I can certainly supply an opinion on the topic for sure.
Because I think that even what we heard from the building commissioner last time, there's some concerns about the legal portion. So I guess I'm more concerned about the legal portion or the legal comments of if what we're doing moving forward is in conflict with mass general law, and we're in conflict, then I guess that's going to put him in a very bad situation. So I guess for that one, I would be more concerned that there's legal opinions on everything as opposed to
Sure.
board opinions.
And so that everyone knows, the appeals court has dealt with trying to interpret this statute, and they have called it one of the most confusing statutes they've ever had to interpret. And they question how to decide things, and they say, in quotes, "I think this is possible under the statute." So it has been a challenging endeavor. We've been having a good time in the exercise of trying to expand the city's rights to regulate and define what to do with these particular structures. And I think we've come on to something that's going to address your concerns, that it is legal and it is consistent with the statute. So I can certainly write that up for the single and the two-family properties
Just want to
too.
make sure.
And I also see, we have the fire chief behind you, and I know Lieutenant Jordan has been giving us support on making sure that whatever we do, the fire safety concerns are being considered, and I think we have that in this report too, and we could probably just look to him for some more support on single and two-family, because I know that that's a different animal there too. So
Okay.
we could do that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, so just to be clear, special meeting, September 5th, 6 PM. To hear this. We declare the hearing recessed. Okay, moving forward. Orders, finance. Petition 20217, order that the City of Fitchburg hereby approve the expenditure of funds from the Mass in Motion Municipal Wellness and Leadership Initiative in the approximate amount of $120,000 for the purpose of said grant, which is to implement local policy, systems, and environmental change strategies to create healthy environments as a way to prevent and reduce obesity, chronic disease, and associated risk factors. Good
Move for
evening.
suspension on 20217.
I have a motion and second for suspension of the rules on 20217. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Will the order be adopted?
Second.
Motion made and seconded to accept 20217. Speaking to the motion? Mr. Curry?
I would like to ask Mr. Curry if he has any comments you'd like to make on this.
Very briefly. This is a 9-year grant, counselors. It is a grant to reduce obesity by way of active living and increasing or decreasing barriers to healthy foods. This grant is been contracted with MOC. If Tricia would mind saying a couple of words on what we plan for the upcoming fiscal year as far as the grant goes. There are a lot of changes in the grant as compared to the last 6 or 7 years. If you wouldn't mind touching on that really briefly, and then we'll move on.
Good evening, Council. My name is Tricia Pistone. I'm the Vice President of the Montechusett Opportunity Council, and I serve as sort of the project lead coordinator for Fun and Fit. As Steve mentioned, MOC's been a subcontract to the city for 9 years, really initially doing work with the schools around obesity and in addressing obesity through healthy access and healthy eating. Mass in Motion has gone through a number of changes over the last 9 years, and this year is asking us to sort of take a step back and do a needs assessment, looking at root cause of obesity and barriers in our own communities. So we're up to that challenge. We actually just submitted a work plan to the state, which we laid out our plan in doing so. Just a real brief overview, and I go into much more detail in the handout that I just gave you. Over the past year, we've really focused our efforts in 3 areas. One is around complete streets, making our streets in Fitchburg more walkable and accessible. The second area is making our parks also more accessible and safe. And the third area is looking at food access. And again, as Fitchburg works a lot in a regional capacity, working on a regional food assessment while locally promoting our farmers market in the upper portion of Main Street. I think we've had some great successes, including supporting public hearings around complete streets, supporting public participation in the one-lane Main Street, and also investing in some projects such as the bike project with Councillor Caddy and the library, the new parklet, some of the planters on Main Street, as well as I think the farmers market, which I think connects really well with residents engaging in downtown activity while accessing fresh food. This year, our real focus will be really a 3-part. One is the idea of leading by race. We're working closely with the new provost, Cardea from Fitchburg State University, looking at creating a leadership institute where residents can become more involved, both nonprofits and as well as on a municipal level. So working with them to address and really understanding more of the root cause barriers for public participation in areas beyond just public access and healthy eating. Through Healthy Eating and Active Living, we're working with Fitchburg State, the Chana, and other nonprofits, including Growing Places, on developing a regional food assessment, which will then identify strategies on how to expand healthy food access. And then the third is working two-part. As Mock just completed a community needs assessment, we know that transportation is a huge area, both in our community and in our region. So taking that on and sort of two approaches. One, what are the barriers to transit and people accessing public transit? And the other is expanding along the work that's already been done around complete streets and working, I know we've had conversations with Councillor Caddy about reinvigorating the Bike Ped Committee as a vehicle to do so, no pun intended. So I think that sort of gives you a summary. But again, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Boschman?
I got a question. Aren't we fighting a losing battle on this kind of? In other words, the reason why I asked you that, we're promoting healthy eating.
Mm-hmm.
But yet, I'm going to Store 24, on the EBT card, buy potato chips, buy soda, buy everything you're not supposed to eat with the EBT card. At one time, you couldn't buy these things. One time, the EBT card, correct me if I'm wrong, was for potatoes, carrots, string beans, all the good food.
Mm-hmm.
But we know better, and now we're fat and we're lazy because we can go and get the EBT card and go to Store 24 and buy my soda, buy the sugar, and now, Philadelphia and Massachusetts is on the next step to pass a sugar law where we're going to tax for sugar. And they claim, by the time this is done, what I've been reading, a six-pack of Coke is going to cost you about $17.50 on the sugar law. That's one thing. That's one I want to ask you there. And then the other thing, on Complete Street. And I know the council is going to get upset. Well, Main Street bicycle path is not right. It's unsafe, it's not right, and it should be changed. The reason why I say that is because your sign says bicycle path. So if a car's backing up on Main Street, you're not allowed, according to the law, and I'm repeating the law, you're not allowed to drive in that breakdown lane for the bicycle path. Because it's designated, says bicycle path on it. And it doesn't have an arrow in there where a driver of a car can go into that lane and use it to go around. You're not supposed to. The flower pot should be on the outside, not on the inside, so they can drive. And if you don't think I'm right, because it's right in how to drive, where is it? Over here, I get it somewhere. Right
Councillor
here.
Boschman?
Rules of the road.
Right, do you have a question specifically
Yes,
for
because
this?
she wants complete streets, and I want complete streets. But my question is, we're fighting a battle here. Our sidewalks are deplorable. The sidewalks are deplorable, and I know. And we got bicycle paths where we can't use them properly. That's what I'm saying. And then the food. The food issue is a big issue with me when I go to Store 24 and we're saying one thing over here, but we're doing something else over here. So we're fighting a losing battle. That's all I'm saying.
Tricia, do you want to address that through Mock specifically?
I can touch on both if just briefly. One, you raise excellent points, and I think that's why the state is actually taking a step back and saying, let's look at from a needs perspective, every community is different. What is the root cause of some of this? Here in Fitchburg in particular, obesity is a symptom to a bigger health issue, whether it's diabetes or other cardiovascular disease. Asthma is at a higher rate than the state average in Fitchburg as well. So our effort, again, is not to come in and say, this is the fix, but let's take a step back and identify really what are those barriers that are here in Fitchburg. And around healthy food access, I think some of the work that we've been trying to do is to give alternatives. The farmers market, we've seen an increase of 25% in usage rates with EBT cards, with WIC, and with senior coupons, even more so. So giving people options and reducing barriers to healthy food, while it may not cure the option of the cheaper version of soda or chips at the local corner store, by providing more opportunities for folks to access it. So what I guess I'm saying is, over the course of the next year, we're looking to work with residents, with providers, with the city to identify what are those local barriers and how we as a city can look to address them. With regards to Complete Streets, the work that we were doing and we continue to advocate for is having resident engagement in these conversations around Complete Streets and about healthy food access. And as you know, being at the public hearing for Complete Streets, we provided an advocacy and outreach to ask residents to come in here to offer their opinions on Complete Streets. And as part of the Complete Streets prioritization plan that actually got submitted to the state, there's a lot of safety efforts around how to make Main Street much safer from a walkable and bikeable perspective that meets state and federal requirements, and they would have to in order to access those funds.
But my only thing is this, councilors, is that Main Street's not the only place. We have a community. That's all I have to
You gotta start somewhere, Counselor, and it's a system and environmental and policy change, so it's gonna take place, it's gotta start somewhere and then grow and build from that point. I understand, we're not gonna solve this in 3 weeks,
It's a long term.
It's a process.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you. Thank you.
Counselor Di Natale.
What is the state office that awards these grants?
I believe this is the Mass Department of Public Health, but it also gets some funding from the CDC.
I would suggest Councilor Boschman contact the Mass Department of Public Health or the CDC, because they're the ones who are giving taxpayer money for these initiatives that you don't seem to approve of or think are making an impact. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Councilor Di Natale. I appreciate it.
All right, I have a motion and second to approve 20217. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Granted. Moving on, 20517, order that the city of Fitchburg hereby approve the expenditure of funds.
We already took that up,
Oh, I'm
Madam
sorry.
Vice President.
Okay. Moving on, orders other, 20617, ordered that the city of Fitchburg sell the described parcel of land, 395 Water Street, the former Water Street Fire Station, to bidders as outlined in the enclosed order. Reference petition number 281-16.
Good evening, councilors. For the record, my name is AJ Tarigny, Chief of Staff to Mayor Di Natale, and happy Tuesday. Councilors, in your packet, you received a notification. I'm here representing Miss Mary Delaney, our Chief Procurement Officer. She gave you a full sheet of explanation as to what happened with this proposal. For the public's, for the viewers and for the public, I'll briefly explain the occurrences. The mayor, as well as Chief Roy and our Chief Procurement Officer, Mary Delaney, in April, put out a proposal for the purchase of the former Water Street Fire Station. And with that, the chief conducted several walkthroughs of the property along with the Chief Procurement Officer. We received one proposal at that time, and that proposal was for an educational and support services for individuals suffering from service trauma and secondary trauma due to an opioid crisis, and the price proposed for the purchase of the building was $100. After the mayor and chief procurement officer discussed the proposal, they decided to perform a second round of proposals due to its price and lack of competition. In June, there was the second proposal was conducted. We received the second round of bids was conducted. We received 2 proposals, one from Davio and Roberts Properties, which is a Bay State Restoration Group, LLC, and they specialize in the extensive renovation and preservation of fire and water damaged buildings. They themselves would restore and preserve using their own company of the building, who have extensive experience, as I said, in property rehabilitation and renovation. The building would then be used as a meeting site for owners and project managers to gather and discuss projects, a storage facility for building materials and equipment to respond to emergency service calls. And the price for the proposal of the purchase of the building was $20,000. And the second proposal was, again, from the same company in the previous round for the same price of $100.
Counselor DiNatale.
So, what are we ultimately doing here?
So tonight, the chief procurement officer is asking you to accept the bid, and then she will move forward with the paperwork to send over to the city attorney's solicitor's office to
sell it to
draft a
Davio?
deed. Sorry, to Davio Brothers. That's correct.
Oh,
that
good.
is the
Right.
most advantageous
Well,
bidder. That's correct.
I'm happy to hear that. Okay, not because of the $100.
No, I understand.
This is a commercial property?
Yes, sir. This is in the central business district.
Move the order be adopted.
Second.
Counselor Dolan, do you want to speak to that?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know that this fire station has come up, I think it closed in the 80s, Chief. And I know that just before one of a mayor at that time put $100,000 into the building, knowing it was going to be closed. But at a meeting a few months ago, I believe it was Councilor Joseph, asked to have a for sale sign put on. I know that it meets the public bidding laws, but it's a shame that we couldn't ever get a for sale sign on a public building on a busy street, just to include some other people. I mean, 99% of people, even if they're interested in real estate, don't ever get the opportunity to see a place like this advertised. But, I mean, I'm for selling it, but the public way of selling property is not how the real world, the private world works, with a sign on a busy street. Thank you.
Counselor DiNatale.
This is a private business, right?
Yes, sir.
A profit business?
Yes, sir.
And it's not a social service agency?
No, sir.
There you go. I don't care if I don't care if this company wanted to sell it for $10, all right? Come on in, as long as it's not what we normally attract here in the last 20 years. Thank you.
Counselor Caddy.
I'd support this, but if, I don't know, Jody, you might have been on the council at the time, we sold the high school annex. And we sold it to a developer for $5,000. After we sold it to him, we didn't put any restrictions on the sale. And he went into the building, removed everything that was architecturally valuable. And then he let the building go for taxes and we own it again. So all I would ask, if we're gonna sell a building like this, is put restrictions on that deed of a timetable, when they're gonna start and when they're gonna be completed. And not being able however we could do it legally, not to allow something like that to happen again, where they dismantle parts of the building for its value to regain their $20,000 and then stop paying their taxes, and we end up owning a building again.
Counselor, I would have to defer that question to the chief procurement officer, but I believe the opportunity to do that was when this property was before City Property Committee. when the historical commission placed what am I term I'm looking for? Placed a restriction onto the deed, which was to restore the building and preserve architectural features, which this company was aware of and was part of the bid process. But the city attorney may also be able to speak to that.
Sure.
My question to the gentleman would be, exactly what did their proposal, they responded to our request for a proposal, and they made a proposal, and
Yeah.
what did they say they were gonna do?
Yes, and they said they would, their response was a year's time to do the work. They were gonna be putting $150,000 into the property, and they were also gonna meet the restriction that the Historical Commission placed on, which, in quotes, because of the heritage and the historic qualities of the brick portions of this 1896 fire station and its attached hose drying tower, preference will be given to proposals that repair, maintain, and reuse the brick portions of this building, which the proposal does say that they will be doing.
Counselor Donnelly?
I'm not finished.
I'm sorry.
Maybe this one's to the solicitor. Could we get some type of retainer from them or some type of a bond? So that if they start the project and don't finish it, that we would have the money to finish it? Again, I'm trying to go back in my memory, because I know what's happened to the city before. It wasn't just the annex building. It happened before to us. And it seems though we do something like this and we end up getting the short end of the stick. And we're the ones selling the property. I think we can put any conditions on the sale we want. And if they're true to their word, I don't think that a company would have a problem signing some type of a consent agreement.
If I can respond?
Sure.
If we could endorse the order authorizing the mayor's office to place conditions he felt necessary, expedient, or helpful to facilitate the intent and purpose of the response to your request for proposal, I'm sure that we would be able to work within those parameters. Thank you.
Counselor Donnelly?
Thank you. I think Councilor Caddy's idea of a retainer of some sort, because for the last 30, 40 years, councils have tried to put a restriction. If you put restrictions on, like it's gonna revert back to the city, then it's pretty near impossible to get financing. But if people are going to put that amount up, if they said 150,000, I mean, that kind of person, you would think that they would have some money to put up as a retainer. You know, how much to be determined. But a retainer is a good way, but when you put restrictions and then you go to the bank to get financing, almost impossible. And it's been tried time and time again.
Councilors, I just would like to further add that this would be their third location. This is not their first location. They have a location in Chicopee and Worcester as well.
City Solicitor?
Can I just inquire from the councilor, when he uses the term retainer, would he consider a bond, posting a bond being of similar sufficient?
Just some kind of make sure you finish. Whatever works best.
Counselor Joseph?
I would say probably out of 16 years on the council, they've been trying to sell that building for 16 years. We've had several attempts that have failed, and that building inside at the time when it was 16 years ago was a very nice building. I mean, it has an apartment type, a meeting area, or it could be a business office up on the second floor. It has very limited parking, but I always thought that building had a repurpose. And I'm glad to see that somebody else has recognized that it has a repurpose. If they're gonna leverage $20,000 and spend $100,000 to rehab it, thank them very much for me, because we've been trying to get somebody to do that for years. Again, as Councilor Caddy says, I mean, even we had School Street building, the old administrative building for the school system. I think we sold it for $500. A couple of years later, the roof collapsed and it had all kinds of problems, and it still isn't in any usable condition, somebody uses the parking lot or something. So I'm glad to see that this is a credible outfit that's doing this proposal so that we can get a credible business and put that piece of property back on the tax roll. So thank you.
You all set? Counselor Di Natale?
Yeah, I think in those other instances, the annex was a private individual, a developer, if you will. It wasn't like a company. This is a company, an established company that is expanding. This is their third location. So I don't have any concerns about what took place in the past. The Historical Commission's already put conditions on it. They've already agreed to those conditions and putting $150,000 into the building. This is an established private business that's expanding. This isn't an individual developer from Boston or New York or something who has grand plans but needs tax credits and state funding, and then he doesn't do anything. So I understand. See, that when I get these kinds of proposals in front of me, I look like I don't care. I close my eyes, just do it. But I guess for me, it's because, as Council Joseph said, for decades this has been vacant, and we haven't had any success. And now we've got a credible business that wants to expand. But I understand some councils are gun shy because of how we've gotten taken to the woodshed in previous examples. So, I mean, what's kind of humorous for me anyway is when we get this good news, it's almost not believable because of our history. Because our history, managerial-wise, for the last 30 years, stinks. So I understand why everybody's got their guards up on these things. But I feel good on this front because it's not your typical run-of-the-mill. It's not what we are usually accustomed to getting. And I would understand the concerns greatly if this were one individual who had some plan to do this or some plan to do that, but they needed financing from outside. That's where I start to get nervous when I hear the word they need financing, because it usually doesn't pan out. So in this case, I wouldn't like to put any retainers on it. This is an established business, third location. Welcome to Fitchburg. Come on in. Please do well and stay there. And, you know, this should be highlighted tremendously. This is a vacant property that most people would say, don't demolish it, try to sell it. We did. So let's move forward with this. I wish these kinds of things would happen on properties like B.F. Brown, which still haven't gone anywhere. Shocker. So let's see if we get a company like that who will buy B.F. Brown. I'm being facetious, of course, because it's a lot bigger building. But, you know, there's a building that's not going to go anywhere. Thank you.
Madam Vice President, I'd just like to quickly add, based on the zoning determination that was also part of the bid package for bidders to review, is that this property is allowed as of right, but does need to go to the planning board for site plan review. And that could also be a time and place to speak about a term for, I believe they could speak about a term for how long they could have for the project with any sort of kickback to the city for a lot of better term.
Councilor
I think
Dean.
I placed a motion before I think Council voted in a second.
You do, so we do have a motion second before us to accept 20617. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great.
Thank you, councilors.
Move 20717 be accepted.
Second.
Have a motion and second to accept 20717. All those in favor?
Aye.
Great. Moving on to ordinances. Preamble to the following ordinance. As there is an existing emergency to ensure compliance with the payroll laws of the Commonwealth, the following ordinance is necessary to protect employees' property interest in their paychecks. This preamble requires a vote separate from that on the ordinance. The preamble requires 8 votes to pass as per City Charter Division 2, Section 20.
Motion to approve the preamble.
I have a motion and second to accept the preamble. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. All right. 20817, an ordinance, Chapter 44, Section 10 of the Code of the City of Fitchburg, as most recently amended, shall be further amended by adding the following. Original language referring petition 15617, under positions paid hourly, effective 5/1/17 Parks, Cemetery, temporary seasonal labor, $13.
Motion to approve. Send it to,
It's amended.
We have to amend first. The proposed amend ordinance. An ordinance, Chapter 44, Section 10 of the Code of the City of Fitchburg, as most recently amended, shall be further amended by adding the following under positions paid hourly, effective 5/1/17, temporary seasonal laborer groundskeeper, $13.
motion to approve the amended of the previously amended.
We need to send it to a first.
Second.
Final reading. Enrolled, ordained, and advertised,
All right,
just like a regular ordinance.
okay,
We should have a motion that says a first and final reading.
all right, go ahead.
Motion was made and seconded, right?
Yes.
So, can we vote on that? Or not until
Could you
this?
restate the motion to send the ordinance to a first and final reading in one passage?
Okay, the motion must have a first and final reading, ordained and registered
In one passage.
in one passage. If somebody would like to do that.
It must be unanimous.
Second?
Was there a first?
Yes.
Okay. And second, thank you. Now do I, speaking to the motion, Counselor Di Natale?
Thank you. The $13 is being raised from, was it 10? 11? Is this to generate interest in these are we having problems filling these positions? Do we have open recs right now that this will impact immediately? The $13?
This is seasonal.
These are temporary workers?
Right.
Yeah.
This is the seasonal help.
Yeah.
Parks, cemeteries, water, wastewater, and streets.
Okay, I understand, I'm not against it, I just want to understand, this is to entice applicants?
Yeah, we're conducting interviews right now.
Have we had problems getting applicants? Is that why we're raising this?
Yeah, we're having problems getting applicants for these jobs. Because we're at minimum wage.
$11 is minimum wage?
Yes.
In Massachusetts, oh. I'm sorry, I get confused with federal minimum wage, okay. All right, I support it, I didn't know if this ordinance was critical in terms of garnering interest. Sounded like we're not getting any interest, so we're raising the pay. I don't think these jobs should be minimum wage anyway. I mean, I used to be a temporary worker at the cemetery for 3 years. It's grueling work, it really is, in the hot sun, and minimum wage, I think there should be more than that, so I agree with this. I just wasn't sure if we had any applicants in the pipeline right now, or we're doing this so we can entice more people to apply.
Well, it's enticing more people in, plus the workers who are already here.
Yep.
Have been promised $13 an hour, but the petition was passed by the council for $13.
Yep.
But we need the accompanying ordinance to go with it.
Is there any retroactive pay involved with this for those current workers, or no?
No.
Okay,
They've been being paid $13 an hour.
okay,
The auditor's office identified this as an issue.
yep.
When they were dealing with the account, they brought it to our attention, and we are moving forward. So you're looking at about an additional $5,600 from the general fund. You're looking at an additional $2,300 from water and $1,100 from wastewater.
These are non-benefited positions, that's not a problem. I was confused as to how are we paying them $13 an hour when we haven't passed the ordinance yet?
It's not clear to me exactly.
I can agree with that.
I'm in favor of paying them $13.
I understand, and I'll take responsibility for having been paying it $13 an hour. The petition passed, I think, the first meeting in June 6th. And so as the positions started to come through, we started to pay them $13, assuming that the ordinance was following right along behind it. The ordinance changed, and it wasn't until the beginning of July that we realized that the ordinances hadn't been changed. And at that point, I said, okay, the ordinance says $11, that's what we need to pay. And in the process, we've been trying to catch up to the what should be paid.
Okay, I'm sorry if I'm prolonging this. I just,
Well, that's all right.
I would assume the $13 would kick in when the ordinance goes through its third and final reading. How did we pay them a wage that we didn't approve
We-
the
we-
ordinance yet for?
I understand. We did, that was my error. I'm the one that signs the payroll. And the petition passed, and the intention, the plan was, as it was going through, was that the ordinance would follow
Okay.
right along. It was the month of June, the change in personnel in my office and human resources, the budget was going through. We just missed it.
Technically, we approved the petition for the ordinance to be drafted at the 13th, so I'm not insinuating that we did anything against the council's wishes. I just, from a process, legal perspective, I didn't know if that had to be etched in stone in the code book before we could do that or not,
No,
that's all.
It was an oversight in my office. We normally would have, if we had caught it initially, this would have been resolved a meeting or two ago.
Thank you.
Attorney Pusateri, do you want to comment anymore?
Well, and I just think that his expectation was that immediately that the passage of the petition would have been followed by introduction of a very simple ordinance, and it would have been a little bit more seamless. So I think it's just important that what we do is get these people's paychecks funded appropriately.
Yep.
Mayor Di Natale.
Thank you, Council President. I just want to give some historical perspective on how this came about. My numerous meetings with the DPW commissioner and my asking him if we could accelerate the pothole issue. God knows we've got those issues and we needed more help. This kind of government moves at a snail's pace, which is frustrating to me. However, it's something we have to live with. I thought it was a simple, we're going from $11 to $13 because the market rate is not there at $11. We're not getting anybody. And Lenny's telling me, you know, we've got the request out there for people to come in for seasonal help, and no one's taking. And we thought, well, it's obviously the salary scale. So I thought it was a simple process of saying, okay, instead of $11, we're going to pay $13. Well, as you can see, it's a legislative process that is very, very cumbersome, slowly moving, but it is what it is. But that's the reason for it. Now, we're also going to help out water and wastewater as well. So these are seasonal jobs. And again, my focus was the pothole issue and trying to get ahead of that because we all know that's a concern for most citizens in the city of Fitchburg. So this was another way of us attacking that problem. Thank you.
Councilor Boschman.
Thank you, Mayor, about the potholes. December's coming fast. I got a question for Lenny. Commissioner, if I would have known you were still looking for help, I would have brought some people down because I was told you had them all. I mean, really. And now I saw on the paper that you were looking for help, and I said, the summer's almost over. We're coming into the fall here.
Yeah.
You're still looking for help, and what's the age? Is it going to be 16, or does it have to be 18? Have to be 18. So you got to be a senior and not a freshman in college for $13 an hour. All right, I'll bring you some people.
Thank you for that. Councilor Donnelly.
Thank you. I just want to verify the fact that I was around when discussion was taking place, and whenever it was first brought up, May, June?
Yeah.
Sometime.
Yeah.
And I did hear and did agree, and I did hear that John and Lenny were talking that we did need the help, and it had to be raised because people were not applying. So I'll verify that I heard it, and I, off the record, I agreed that this is how we gotta get help. We have to pay them properly. Thank you.
Councilor Di Natale.
I have a faux pas. I just realized something. The budget we passed, or the majority of us passed, that had the $13 in there, did it not? We already covered the $13.
Yeah, the money's in the budget.
So I was going somewhere with my earlier comment, but because the budget is law, with the $13 baked in, this is more of a formality. So I don't think you made an error then, Mr. Otter. the budget was passed at $13. That's a law. So I don't believe there was ever any error, and I want to make it clear, I'm not insinuating anymore that there was. So, thank you.
All right, I have a motion and second. In order to pass this ordinance as amended, we must receive a unanimous vote. Is that by roll call? Or no? Okay, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Brooks.
you. Thank you, Mr. Brooks.
20917.
Move 20917 be sent to its first reading.
Second.
I have a motion and second to send 20917 to its first reading. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great. Petitions.
Motion to send 21017 up to and including 213 to.
I have a motion and a second to send petition 21017.
We need to go to 11 out, and it needs to be amended and granted, because that matches the ordinance, the order from John DeLine.
Okay, 21017, 21217, and 213 to its respective committees. 21117 has to be amended and granted as amended under suspension.
Because it reflects the order from John DeLine.
Okay, because it reflects that, the order 20117 that we heard earlier.
Motion to send 21017, 212, and 213 to their respective committees.
I have a motion, second, to send the petitions to their committees. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great. 21117, John DeLine Jr., Deputy Commissioner of Water Supply, to approve the attached resolution and order which authorizes the City of Fitchburg DPW Division of Water Supply to accept grant funding in the amount up to $162,550,000 as outlined in the closed petition.
Move for suspension on 21117.
I have a motion and second for suspension of the rules at 21117. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great.
Move for adoption of 21117.
Needs to be amended to delete all language except that pertinent to the grant funding.
The petition,
Move to amend 21117. Do I have to read again
yeah,
on
to
the
delete
email?
all,
To what the email stated says from the clerk's office?
yes. At that, the sentence that says the corresponding petition to 1117,
Yeah,
that, please.
yes. I'm not going to read it again.
Okay.
Second.
So I have a motion and second for the amended petition to be accepted. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Move 21117 be adopted as amended.
Second.
Excellent. Motion and second to approve 21117 as amended. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great.
Move we adjourn.
I have a motion and second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Great. We are adjourned.